Page 13, Tip Toe. Now this lesson will cover all the pages up to page 13 and page 13, because I start giving my lessons when the book presents written music. And this is the first piece of written music they've really given you, so here we go. On page 6, they show you pictures of the hands and the fingers and the numbers for the fingers. See, in piano we have numbers for the fingers. That way they can put numbers in the music to tell you which finger to use to play that note. For now, you just need to know what the finger numbers are. Thumb is number 1, and they just go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. Just remember thumb is number 1, little finger's number 5, and you can figure out the rest, I hope. It's a little bit different because if you like play violin or something like that, they don't use the thumb, so 1 is the index finger because they only use 4 fingers. With piano, we use them all, so 1 is the thumb. And that, I say that because I also play violin, and that threw me when I got into finger numbers. They're different. On page 7, they're showing you a group of 2 black keys. Just look at the piano for a minute. Any keyboard, doesn't matter. Just look at a keyboard. And generally, you have white and black keys. They don't have to be white and black. They could be any color they want, and some pianos, well, but most of them are white and black. And the black keys, you'll see patterns of them because the white keys all look alike. So how do we know which key is what? It's the black keys that tell us that. The black keys are in patterns. You have groups. We have a group of 2. That's like they're showing you on page 7, a group of 2. And you've got a lot of group of 2s. There are lots over. And we'll talk about the others later. We'll just stick with a group of 2 right now. Just for now, you need to be able to recognize a group of 2 black keys on piano. Anywhere out. It could be way up here, it could be way down here. It doesn't matter where they are. It's a group of 2 black keys. You want to play them, that's up to you. I play them together. You can play them one at a time. I don't care what. Just know where we got groups of 2 black keys. That's what we're after. On page 8, we're going to use the group of 2 black keys to show us where a note is on the white keys. And we take the group of 2 black keys and we go down, and down means you go lower. The notes get lower. That's going down. We're going in that direction. Going up is the other way. The notes get higher. That's that. So when we say down, you go that direction. Up, you go that direction, and you can figure out which direction you're going based on whether the pitches on the piano go up or down. Okay. Well, a group of 2 black keys. We're going to start in the middle. Right in front of you. Sit in the middle of the keyboard. These are right in front of you. And we go down just below the black key here. The white key, that's right below them. This one. You see, we can do this on all of them. I can do here, I can do here, I can do here. They're just all over the place. We're going to focus right in the middle of the keyboard right now, just here. This note is called middle C. It's a C. See, the letters represent note names. All the notes we use are the first 7 letters of the alphabet, so there's only 7 of them you gotta learn. A through G, we don't have H. Well, this is C, middle C. It's kind of our starting point. It's not middle C because it's in the middle of the piano, because it's not in the middle of the piano. Actually, middle of the piano is closer to F or F sharp. Here, middle C, it's close to you, but it's not. It's middle C because it's in the middle of the grand staff. So we got to learn what a grand staff is and what that's all about. We have a lot of symbols in music, in written music, that tells us about music and how to play pieces and all that stuff. Well, we're going to memorize these symbols, and you got to know them forever. You're not allowed to forget them, but you're going to be using them, so okay. And we'll take our time in learning them, and I'm going to go over them and over them and over them, because you got to know them. So on page 8, in the middle of the page, there is a treble clef. They give the clef sign, and it's that squiggly looking, weird thing looking there. That's what it's called, a treble clef. It's also called a G clef. It's important to know that, and I'll come back to the G clef thing. They're just calling it a treble clef for now. Okay. And then underneath that is a bass clef. And there's another little sign, it's got 2 dots. And the bass clef is also called an F clef, and I'll come back to the F thing later. Right now, we'll just concentrate on bass clef. So those 2 symbols you need to know, treble clef and bass clef. On page 9, they show you the grand staff. Now, they're not showing you what a staff is, so let me explain. A staff, she's calling it a fence. That's her name for this. In music, we don't call it a fence. We call it a staff. You want to look at it as a fence, that's fine. You go right ahead and play with it, and it's a fence. But in music, it's really a staff. It's those 5 lines. You don't need anything on them. It's just the 5 lines all by themselves is called a staff. Now what they do is she says in gate, where you're starting there, and the out gate is the end, because you read from left to right, and in music we read from left to right, and so you're starting on one side and ending at the other. This author is the first one I've run across that calls them in gate, fence, and out gate. You're not going to run across that in music. That's not how we talk in music. So if you want to spend time learning those things, you go right ahead. But technically speaking, you have 2 stabs there, and they're linked with the vertical lines. The vertical lines, when they go through both stabs, tell you that you're going to do the stuff in both stabs at the same time. They're linked together. The top staff has that treble clef in it. That's usually the way it is, but it doesn't have to be. And the bottom staff has the bass clef in it. And again, that's usually how it is, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, the staves could have both treble clef or both bass clef, or who knows what's going on. But most of the time, you're going to see treble in the top staff and bass in the bottom staff. Bottom of page 9, they get to middle C in the music. We already covered middle C on the keyboard. Remember, it's in front of you, a group of 2 black keys. It's the white key underneath. Because all of these are C's anywhere. This is a C, that's a C, C, C. They're all C's. If it's below a group of 2, it's a C. That's the way it is. But middle C, there's only one, and that's the one in the middle where you're sitting. Again, it's not the middle of the keyboard. It's the middle of the grand staff, where they're showing you a grand staff. And at the bottom of page 9, now we get the written C, middle C, in the music. For the top staff, where the treble clef is, it is on a little line below the staff. See, that staff is 5 lines. Well, that's not enough. We got a lot more notes than that. So what they do is they add more lines. And the C is on one of those lines. It's underneath the treble clef. It's here. So when you see that note in the music, you play this key on the piano. Simple as that. For the bass clef, you see in the middle there, we're at the bottom of page 9 here. It's the 3rd note over. You have a C from the bass clef, and that is on a line above the staff. So even though they don't look like the same note in the music, they are the same note. If they would print the stabs closer together, those C's would line up all the way across. All of those notes in that line are C's, middle C's. They're all there. Just some of them it's showing you from the treble clef, and some of them it's showing you from the bass clef. But the C is in the middle of those 2 stabs together. That C is right in the middle of them. That's why it's called middle C. Now, a note. Let's look at these notes at the bottom of page 9. First one is just a circle. That's fine. Next one is a solid dot or circle, solid, and it has a line going up. We call that a stem. And the next one has the circle again, but the line's going down. We call that a stem. Remember, the line is called a stem. Not all notes have a stem, obviously, because the first one doesn't. But just know that sometimes we refer to the stem. You need to know what we're referring to. Now, the stem doesn't have anything to do with how you play the note. It's more in the music. Generally, if the note's down in the staff, the stem will go up. Then usually, if the note is high up in the staff, the stem will go down. but that's for people who are writing out music. We'll talk more about that later. On page 10, they want you to play a bunch of middle C's. And they're telling you you can use thumb on your thumb. Remember, first finger's the thumb here. If you do that, just rest the other fingers on the hands or on the keys next to it. Just here, just right there. And they're telling you to play these notes with the thumb. You can do it with either hand. You can hear this thumb or this thumb, whichever. You're just playing this note. Okay, isn't that fun? Did we have fun yet? Oh. One thing I will try and get you to do right from the outset is once you know where you are, try and keep your eyes on the music and not on the keyboard. Try and feel, what does it feel like to play these notes without looking at them? You don't have to look at the keyboard to play a note. There are times when you have to look down because you're going to be moving around and stuff. But as much as possible, you want to develop a feel for where the notes are. So you can play those notes on top of page 10 with either hand, both hands. Play it one time with one hand and the next time with the other hand. At the bottom of page 10, they're showing you the middle C's, and now they've lined them up between the staff. Now you can see how the note is in the middle of a grand staff. Well, they have the stem going up. In this case, that's going to tell us that the right hand is going to play the notes. Because remember I said the stem, when it's down in the lower part of the staff, the stem will go up. And if it's in the upper part of the staff, the stem will go down. These stems are going up. That tells me these notes are in the lower part of the staff, which means that they belong to the upper staff. So I'm going to use the right hand. We're going to use the right hand for now to play the stuff in the upper staff, and the left hand for now to play the stuff in the lower staff. We'll change it later. So for the bottom of page 10, on those C's, you would use the right hand because those stems are going up. That tells you the notes belong in the upper staff, which is the right hand for now. Okay, on top of page 11, those C's with the stems going down, those belong to the lower staff. So you play those with the left hand. Okay. Just keep it in mind, it comes in handy. But again, we're going to get this so much and we're going to repeat it so much. If you're not quite understanding now, hang in there. You're going to always ask me questions. If you have an account in YouTube, you can put it in the comments. My Twitter information is down there. You can tweet me. My email address for this YouTube channel is down there. You can email me a question. It's up to you how you ask if you're confused. Now, at the bottom of page 11, now we get the C's with stems going up and stems going down. So, and now they've put the C's more closely to the staff where they go to. Because they could have lined them up evenly in the middle again, like they did at the top of page 11. They could have done that at the bottom of page 11. They didn't. They did it there. So you're going to play the first two C's with the right hand, the next two C's with the left hand, and then alternate them. Like so. And again, try and do this without looking at the keyboard if you can. Now the C's, the thumb's playing the same note, so you just got to kind of get out of the way. Leave the other fingers where they are, and you just kind of get out of the way. They learn to get along, the hands, because sometimes they get together and fight. But they'll learn to get along, and you can do this eventually. Now on page 12, we got some more symbols to cover. As a review, remember the 5 lines are called a staff. They're connected with these vertical bars. These bars that come down, these lines, they're called bar lines, or measure lines. Depends on what country you're from. I'm liable to call them either one. So just know that a measure line and a bar line is the same thing in music. So you got treble clef in the top staff, bass clef in the bottom staff. We're good to go. And the thing I didn't mention earlier is what identifies this mess as a grand staff. And that is the curly brace at the beginning. See that curly brace, that weird looking thing? That identifies this whole setup as a grand staff. And you're going to see lots of other instruments use this same kind of thing. but piano music certainly uses it. So here we have, this the top page 12 in the music. We get the grand staff, treble and bass clefs. You got the bar lines or measure lines, and the space in between the lines are called measures or bars. It could be called either one. It could be a bar or a measure. I'm liable to call it either one. Then at the end of the line, you have two little lines. That's called a double bar line. Generally, we don't call it a double measure line for some reason. It's always called a double bar line. You go figure it out. I don't know. Now, according to what this author is going, at the bottom half of page 12, let's talk about this. We got our middle C. And what she is saying is, if it is a solid circle, a solid like a dot with a stem, you count 1. And if it is an empty circle with a stem, you count it for 2. 1, 2. Then the third one is, if it's just a circle without a stem, you count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What we're doing here is we're telling you how long to hold the note down. How many counts to hold the note down. And I want to caution you that this is not always the case. It's the case for now. We will adjust it later. For now, when you see that first note, which is called a quarter note, by the way, and you need to know that. It's a quarter note, because look at the third quarter note, or some quarter note in, you need to know what a quarter note is. And that is a solid circle, or a dot, with a stem. That's a quarter note. Now, some countries call them other things. If you're in another country that calls them other things, I'll let you do the translation to them. I believe a quarter note can also be called a crotchet. Because one of my piano teachers I had was born and raised in England and educated in England, and she would call them crotchets and minims and quavers and semiquavers and all that constantly. And I had, what? And it was a bit of a problem for me, constantly having to try and figure out which is which. But here in the United States, we call them quarter notes. So that's what I'm using in my lesson. They're quarter notes. Then the empty circle with the stem, that's called a half note. So we have a quarter note, we got a half note. Then the whole circle without the stem, that's called a whole note. So we got 3 different notes. Quarter note, half note, and whole note. See, they keep dividing by 2. You got a whole. If you divide it by 2, you get 2 halves, a half and a half. If you take a half and divide it by 2, you get 2 quarters, a quarter and a quarter. It keeps dividing by 2. And that's the way music works. The notes keep dividing by 2. So that's what we're doing so far. On page 13, at the top of the page, they're giving you a time signature. Time signature tells you how many notes or how many counts a note is going to get, and how many counts are in a measure. Now that was a mouthful of nothing, so let's cover this real careful. There's 2 numbers involved, and there are exceptions to this. We'll forget the exceptions. Let's just stay focused on this. There's 2 numbers involved. It looks like a fraction. They got a 2 and a line and a 4. The line isn't there. Never mind the line. That line represents one of the lines in the staff. Generally, you don't think of it as a fraction 2/4. It's not. It's just a 2 and a 4, and they're stacked on each other. The top number, or in this case a 2, tells you how far you have to count. We're only going to count to 2. So we go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You just keep repeating it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 until the song is over. The bottom number tells you what you're counting, because if you're going to count something, it's nice to know what you're counting. And 4 represents quarter note, 1/4 or a quarter. I keep coming back to fractions, even though we're not really talking fractions here. It's just easier to understand these notes as a fraction. I got a whole or a half or a quarter, divided. Well, the 4 underneath the time signature at the bottom there represents quarter note. So we're counting quarter notes. So there's the same as 2 quarter notes in every measure. Remember, measure is the distance between the vertical lines, or the measure lines, or the bar lines. So remember on bottom of page 12, I said for now, the quarter note gets 1 count and a half note gets 2 and so forth. Well, how many counts a note gets depends on the time signature. Because if that bottom number is not a 4, then a quarter note's not getting a count. It gets something else. As long as that bottom number's a 4, then a quarter note gets a count. And we're okay. So let's look at Tiptoe in the middle of the piece. This is our first piece. We have a piece of music here. We have another symbol here that is important, and we need to know what it is, and that is the thin and thick bar line at the end. Because before it's always been 2 thin bar lines, a double bar. Well, this is a thin and thick bar line. That is the symbol for an end of a piece. The music ends there eventually, because it's not always going to be at the end. It could be someplace else. But the point is that thin and thick bar line needs to be at the end of the piece. If you're writing music out, make sure wherever your piece ends, you put in a thin and thick bar line at the end of it. It just tells us the piece is over. So let's look at Tiptoe. It's our first piece. And I have a set process I go through when I learn a new piece of music. Everybody has a process. You'll develop your own process. That's fine, however you want to do it. But for these videos, I'm using my process. So that's what I do. The first thing is I look it over. Just generally look it over. I see it's 1 line long, or in this case, 4 measures. Okay, so I know how long it is. I see it's got treble and bass clef, because it doesn't always have to be treble and bass clef, so check those clef signs. And then it's got 2/4 time signature. So I know there's 2 counts in a measure, or I'm counting to 2, and I'm counting quarter notes, where there's the same as 2 quarter notes in every measure. Then I take it, generally I take it 1 hand at a time and I work it out, all 1 hand working, and get the other hand working, and then I try and put them together, which usually it all falls apart. But in Tiptoe, it's only 1 hand or the other playing, so I'm going to take both hands at the same time here. And I see at the beginning, they're all middle C's, by the way. It's the only note we've had so far. And I'm going to put my thumb in the right hand on middle C here, because you see the little 1 above the note? That's the finger number. They're telling you put your thumb on that note. That puts the rest of the hand here. I just resting them here. Yeah, I have to push down. I like to make noise, so I push down. You don't have to. That's where it goes. And then in the second measure, or second bar, you see those C's. There's a 1 underneath it for the left hand, and that's the thumb for the left hand. That's here. If I do that, then the hand goes here. So the hands are here. They're sharing middle C. We call this middle C position because we're positioning the hands where the thumbs are sharing middle C. So I might say, put your hands in middle C position. That's what it would be. It would be right here. And then I play the notes. Well, I got 2 C's here, and then I got 2 C's for the left hand, and then the rest of the C's are for the right hand. So I got the notes. Then I can do the rhythm. And if the rhythm is simple, sometimes I do the notes and the rhythm at the same time, because if you can combine these things. But just one at a time for now. So then I'm going to count it. 1, 2, 1. Remember the time signature? 1, 2, 1, 2. We want to keep a steady count, a steady pace, a steady beat. You don't have to go fast. I can go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. You don't have to go real slow. 1, 2. That drags it. A nice steady speed. And I want to play all these notes. The quarter notes, going to hold it down for 1 count. 1, 2, and then the left hand gets in. 1, 2, and then here 1, 2, 1, 2. See the half notes for 2 counts because I hold it down for 2 counts. 1, 2, up or off. When I get to the end of a piece of music, I say off because there's no note, there's no beat there. I can't go 1, 2, 1 because there's no 1. The piece is over. So I just say off, which means lift up. You see, it's important when you hold a note down for a certain period of time, you hold it down for the full length you can. Don't cut it short. So a note or a beat, excuse me, a beat ends when the next beat starts. 1, 2. 1 lasts up until 2 starts. And that lasts up until the next beat starts. So it's 1, 2. I don't go 1, 2. I'm not holding them down. You got to hold them down. Well, in that last measure where the half note is, 1, 2, and then I come up. It comes up. So hold it down for 2 full counts. 1, 2, up. Because if you go 1, 2, there, you've only held it down for 1 count. Because you came up on beat 2. 1, 2. And that's incorrect. You got to have it down for both counts. 1, 2, up. And that's important. So I got an idea of the notes and the rhythms. I try and make it steady. No hesitations anywhere. 1, 2. 1, 2, up. So it's a steady beat all the way across. It's important. And if you can, try and get this where you don't have to look at the keyboard for it. You play the whole thing by feeling this. How fast you go is not important. Keep it at whatever speed you go, but there can be no hesitations in it. If you're hesitating, I'm hesitating, you got to go through and work out those hesitations so it is a steady beat all the way through. It's so important that we do this. Now, I would like to play this with you very slowly, and let's double check. You see, if you have a teacher, and I hope you do, you really need a live teacher to help you. The teacher will tell you if you play a wrong note, or they'll tell you if your timing is off. They'll tell you. But when you're by yourself, how do you really know? Well, we're only playing one note, so that shouldn't be a problem. Later on, when we start playing other notes, you can play a wrong note and not know it. So I do a thing in my video called a play with me, and that's where I play it very slowly and ask you to play it with me to see, are you playing the same note I'm playing at the same time I'm playing it? That way you can check your notes and your timing. That's what I want to do right now. Let's play it together very slowly. I'm going to give us 2 counts. I'm going to go ready, go. That's 2 counts. And then we're going to play it together, slowly. Now this is after you've learned it. Learn it first before you try this. No hesitations. So put your hands where they go, here. Here we go. Ready, go. 1, 2, off. Hopefully that didn't hurt too much. Now at the bottom of the page, there is a part down there, music down there for the teacher to play. So you can play together with your teacher. I would like to play that at the bottom, and you play what you just played. Usually with a duet, I speed it up, but for right now, we're going to keep it the same speed. So you play what you just did, and I'm going to play this bottom part. Now you have to concentrate on what you're doing, but you got to listen to me to stay with me. And what I'm playing is a little different than you, so don't let me confuse you. But I'll give us 2 counts, and let's try it together. Ready, go.